So let us begin. Chapter 5, The Jackal. Those were drinking days, and most men drank hard. So very great is the improvement time has brought about in such habits, that a moderate statement of the quantity of wine and punch which one man would swallow in the course of a night, without any detriment to his reputation as a perfect gentleman, would seem in these days a ridiculous exaggeration. The learned profession of the law was certainly not behind any other learned profession in its bacchanalian propensities. Neither was Mr. Stryver, already fast shouldering his way to a large and lucrative practice behind his compeers in this particular, any more in the drier parts of the legal race. A favourite at the Old Bailey and eke at the Sessions, Mr. Stryver had begun cautiously to hew away the lower staves of the ladder on which he mounted. Sessions and Old Bailey had now to summon their favourite specially to their longing arms, and shouldering itself towards the visage of the Lord Chief Justice in the Court of King's Bench, the florid countenance of Mr. Stryver might be daily seen, bursting out of the bed of wigs like a great sunflower pushing its way at the sun from among a rank garden full of flaring companions. It had once been noted at the bar that while Mr. Stryver was a glib man and unscrupulous and a ready and a bold, he had not the faculty of extracting the essence from a heap of statements, which is among the most striking and necessary of the advocate's accomplishments. But a remarkable improvement came upon him as to this. The more business he got, the greater his power seemed to grow of getting at its pith and marrow, and however late at night he sat carousing with Sydney Carton, he always had his points at his fingers' ends in the morning. Sydney Carton, idlest and most unpromising of men, was Stryver's great ally. But the two drank together between Hilary Term and Michaelmas might have floated a king's ship. So it's talking about Stryver the lawyer and how the only real reason why he's successful is because of Sydney Carton. Sydney Carton is his great ally, the reason why Stryver wins as many cases as he does, and they drink a lot. Good ko no, him and Carton drink a lot. It said that if you were to measure how much they drank in a year, it would be able to float a king's ship. Stryver never had a case in hand anywhere, but Carton was there with his hands in his pockets, staring at the ceiling of the court. They went the same circuit, and even there they prolonged their usual orgies late into the night, and Carton was rumoured to be seen at broad day going home stealthily and unsteadily to his lodgings, like a dissipated cat. At last it began to get about among such as were interested in the matter that although Sydney Carton would never be a lion, he was an amazingly good jackal, and that he rendered suit and service to Stryver in that humble capacity. So everyone agreed that Carton would never be tarong enough to be a lion of the law. However, he was skilled enough and smart enough that they did call him a jackal, which can be just as ruthless but not as respectable. 10 o'clock, sir, said the man at the tavern whom he had charged to wake him. 10 o'clock, sir. What's the matter? 10 o'clock, sir. What do you mean, 10 o'clock at night? Yes, sir, your honor told me to call you. Oh, I remember. Very well, very well. After a few dull efforts to get to sleep again, which the man dexterously combated by stirring the fire continuously for 5 minutes, he got up, tossed his hat on, and walked out. He turned into the temple, and having revived himself by twice pacing the pavements of King's Bench Walk and Paper Buildings, turned into the Stryver chambers. The Stryver clerk who never assisted at these conferences had gone home, and the Stryver principal opened the door. He had his slippers on and a loose bedgown, and his throat was bare for his greater ease. He had that rather wild, strange, seared marking about the eyes which may be observed in all free livers of his class, from the portrait of Jeffreys downward, and which can be traced under various disguises of art through the portraits of every drinking age. You are a little late, Memory, said Stryver. About the usual time, it may be a quarter of an hour later. They went into a dingy room lined with books and littered with papers where there was a blazing fire. A kettle steamed upon the hob, and in the midst of the wreck of papers a table shone, with plenty of wine upon it, and brandy and rum, and sugar and lemons. You have had your bottle, I perceive, Sydney. Two tonight, I think. I have been drinking with the day's client, or seeing him dine. It's all one. That was a rare point, Sydney, that you brought to bear upon the identification. How did you come by it? When did it strike you? So they're talking about the case that Sydney really won or let Stryver win, and they're working slash drinking at the same time. Mr. Stryver, how did you come by it? When did it strike you? I thought he was rather a handsome fellow, and I thought I should have been much the same sort of fellow if I had had any luck. Mr. Stryver laughed till he shook his precocious paunch. You and your luck, Sydney. Get to work, get to work. Suddenly enough, the jackal loosened his dress, went into an adjoining room, and came back with a large jug of cold water, a basin, and a towel or two. Steeping the towels in the water and partially wringing them out, he folded them on his head in a manner hideous to behold, sat down at the table, and said, Now I am ready. Not much boiling down to be done tonight, Memory, said Mr. Stryver gaily as he looked among his papers. How much? Only 2 sets of them. Give me the worst first. There they are, Sydney. Fire away. The lion then composed himself on his back on a sofa on one side of the drinking table, while the jackal sat at his own paper-bestrewn table proper on the other side of it, with the bottles and glasses ready to his hand. Both resorted to the drinking table without stint, but each in a different way. The lion, for the most part reclining with his hands in his waistband looking at the fire, or occasionally flirting with some lighter document, the jackal, with knitted brows and intent face so deep in his task that his eyes did not even follow the hand he stretched out for his glass, which often groped about for a minute or more before it found the glass for his lips. 2 or 3 times the matter in hand became so naughty that the jackal found it imperative on him to get up and steep his towels anew. From these pilgrimages to the jug and basin, he returned with such eccentricities of damp headgear as no words can describe, which were made the more ludicrous by his anxious gravity. Okay, so as they work, Sydney is kind of, his clothes are kind of loosened around him, and then he has these towels that he puts over his head to help keep him sober. And the way it describes the work, guys, is nga si Stryver kuno, it's very, he's just sitting down, looking at a few papers or petting his belly, while Sydney is busy at work, yun, knotted brow, concentrating very hard, so concentrated on the papers. And when he reaches for his drink, he doesn't even look up and get his drink. More, he just kind of reaches for it and he takes it. So it's Dickens is just explaining how they work, no, but he's describing so much about both characters and their working relationship. At length, the jackal had got together a compact repast for the lion and proceeded to offer it to him. The lion took it with care and caution, made his selections from it and his remarks upon it, and the jackal assisted both. So he did all the work, he gave it to Stryver, and Stryver made corrections and edits, but Carton had to help him pag yun, revise and edit it. When the repast was fully discussed, the lion put his hands in his waistband again and lay down to meditate. The jackal then invigorated himself with a bumper for his throttle and a fresh application to his head, and applied himself to the collection of a second meal. This was administered to the lion in the same manner, and was not disposed of until the clock struck 3 in the morning. And now we have done, Sydney, fill a bumper of punch, said Mr. Stryver. The jackal removed the towels from his head, which had been steaming again, shook himself, yawned, shivered, and complied. You were sound, Sydney, in the matter of those crown witnesses today, every question told. I always am sound, am I not? I don't gainsay it. What has roughened your temper? Put some punch to it and smooth it again. With a deprecatory grunt, the jackal again complied. The old Sydney Carton of old Shrewsbury School, said Stryver, nodding his head over him as he reviewed him in the present and the past. The old seesaw Sydney, up 1 minute and down the next, now in spirits and now in despondency. So they're talking again, and guys, this is not a useless chapter. Good, it's an easy chapter to just kind of forget about and consider it as filler, but it's revealing so much about Sydney Carton and his relationship with Stryver. Okay, so Stryver said, "Oh yeah, in school they called you Seesaw Sydney because you were up 1 minute, down the next. Murag he had very grabe kaayo iyang highs, grabe sad kaayo iyang lows." Si Sydney Carton. Ah, returned the other, sighing. Yes, the same Sydney with the same luck. Even then, I did exercises for other boys and seldom did my own. So even in school, He would do the assignments of other classmates, but he wouldn't do his own assignment. And why not? God knows it was my way, I suppose. He sat with his hands in his pockets and his legs stretched out before him, looking at the fire. Carton, said his friend, squaring himself at him with a bullying air, as if the fire grate had been the furnace in which sustained endeavour was forged, and the one delicate thing to be done for the old Sydney Carton of old Shrewsbury School was to shoulder him into it. Your way is, and always was, a lame way. You summon no energy and purpose. Look at me. Oh, botheration, returned Sydney with a lighter and more good-humoured laugh. Don't you be moral. How have I done what I have done, said Stryver. How do I do what I do? Partly through paying me to help you, I suppose, but it's not worth your while to apostrophize me or the air about it. What you want to do, you do. You were always in the front rank and I was always behind. So Stryver is like, Sydney, focus, Marago. Let's be serious about this. How do you think I made it to what I am today? And he said, because you pay me to help you do it. Okay? And so Sydney tries to make a joke out of it. And it's a funny joke because it's true. The reason why Stryver is so successful is because Sydney does all the work. All right? But Stryver really wants him to examine himself. Now, why do you think am I successful and you are considered unsuccessful to society? And the thing with Stryver is he has ambition. He wants to be in the front ranks. Good. I had to get into the front rank. I was not born there, was I? I was not present at the ceremony, but my opinion is you were, said Carton. At this he laughed again, and they both laughed. Before Shrewsbury and at Shrewsbury, and ever since Shrewsbury, pursued Carton, you have fallen into your rank, and I have fallen into mine. Even when we were fellow students in the quartier Latin, picking up French and French law and other French crumbs that we didn't get much good of, you were always somewhere, and I was always nowhere. And whose fault was that? Upon my soul, I am not sure that it was not yours. You were always driving and riving and shouldering and pressing to that restless degree that I had no chance for my life but in rest and repose. It's a gloomy thing, however, to talk about one's own past with the day breaking. Turn me in some other direction before I go. Well then, pledge me to the pretty witness, said Stryver, holding up his glass. Are you turned in a pleasant direction? Apparently not, for he became gloomy again. So Carton was like, can we just stop talking about me and why I am what I am? And so Stryver was like, sige, toast to the pretty witness. Who do you think the pretty witness is? Marag, let's make a toast to the guapa witness. It's obviously Miss Manette, Lucy, okay? And the mention of her made Carton gloomier, sadder. Pretty witness, he muttered, Sydney, looking down into his glass. I have had enough of witnesses today and tonight. Who's your pretty witness? The picturesque doctor's daughter, Miss Minette. She pretty? Is she not? No. Okay, so Stryver was like, to the pretty witness, and then Murag, Sydney became kind of gloomy and was like, who are you talking about? And Stryver said, I'm Miss Manette, I'm talking about the doctor's daughter. And then Carton was like, huh? She's not pretty, man. Okay, Murag, he kind of declared to Stryver that she wasn't pretty. Why, man alive, was she was the admiration of the whole court, wrought the admiration of the whole court, who made the Old Bailey a judge of beauty. She was a golden-haired doll. Do you know, Sydney, said Mr. Stryver, looking at him with sharp eyes, and slowly drawing a hand across his florid face. Do you know, I rather thought at the time that you sympathized with the golden-haired doll, and were quick to see what happened to the golden-haired doll. Why, man? So Stryver was like, oh, really? You noticed her very well in the court. What did Carton do that showed that he noticed Lucy good? Remember when she fainted, he was the first one to notice that she was about to faint. Quick to see what happened. If a girl, doll or no doll, swoons within a yard or two of a man's nose, he can see it without a perspective glass. I pledge you, but I deny the beauty. And now I'll have no more drink. I'll get to bed. When his host followed him out on the staircase with a candle to light him down the stairs, the day was coldly looking in through its grimy windows. When he got out of the house, the air was cold and sad. The dull sky overcast, the river dark and dim, the whole scene like a lifeless desert. And wreaths of dust were spinning round and round before the morning blast, as if the desert sand had risen far away, and the first spray of it in its advance had begun the overwhelming of the city. Waste forces within him and a desert all around, this man stood still on his way across a silent terrace and saw for a moment lying in the wilderness before him a mirage of honorable ambition, self-denial, and perseverance. Okay, so Carton's going to bed, and before that he kind of looks to the distance and he sees lying in the wilderness before him, a mirage of honorable ambition, self denial, and perseverance. So he sees that he knows that if he were just to work for it, he could build a good life for himself. In the fair city of this vision, there were airy galleries from which the loves and graces looked upon him, gardens in which the fruits of life hung ripening, waters of hope that sparkled in his sight. A moment, and it was gone. Climbing to a high chamber in a well of houses, he threw himself down in his clothes on a neglected bed, and its pillow was wet with wasted tears. So Sydney, good guys, he's miserable good. He's miserable and no one understands why, because he's smart, he's talented, he's handsome, he has so many gifts, but he doesn't use them. He doesn't use them for himself. He doesn't use it for his own good. He's fine using it for Striver to become rich and to become respected, but he doesn't do it for himself, or he doesn't do it for good, for his own good. He doesn't do it selflessly. The thing with Carton is he's a very fascinating character, and we know he's sad. We know he regrets the decisions that he's made, but he also doesn't do anything to correct them. Sadly, sadly, the sun rose, and it rose upon no sadder sight than the man of good abilities and good emotions, incapable of their directed exercise, incapable of his own help and his own happiness, sensible of the blight on him, and resigning himself to let it eat him away. So it said, oh, he has good abilities, he has good emotions, but he doesn't know how to use it for his own good. And he kind of has just accepted his his fate or destiny or situation as a sad man. And murag the heavens had kuno mourn over him. Or there's no sadder sight than a man who is so gifted but doesn't use the gifts for his own good, or doesn't, or just resigns himself to being sad and and rejected. Okay, so fascinating character. I hope you're getting attached to Carton. I know Chikara cried multiple times in her video. I don't cry, but I feel for Sydney Carton, and we should all feel for Sydney Carton. Okay.